one umbrella health and wellness counseling and psychological services. So all those programs are now working collaboratively to build a preventive wellness program tailored to the needs of the student population. Bob joined us just this summer, and prior to being at RISD, he worked as Director of Counseling Services and Associate Dean. He held those positions at the University of Rhode Island, at Brown, at Amherst College, as well as in communities HMOs. During this session, which will be basically composed of about 15 minutes of presentations, and then the rest will focus on answering your questions, so a Q&A session. During his portion, he will talk about health services at RISD. He will describe CAPS, provide an overview of the quarantine process, highlight campus changes due to COVID, and discuss plans for the semester moving forward. We will also have Elyana Kadish joining us. Elyana is as well new to RISD. She is the Health and Education and Promotion Coordinator. She holds a master's in community development and planning from Clark University and has a background in Title I and wellness education. She joined RISD this summer and supervises a new and very exciting health and wellness ambassador student program, which she just described to us. And I can't wait for you to hear about it. It is fantastic. Outside of work, Elyana enjoys reading with her cat next to her, cooking, and paddleboarding. She will talk about the health education and promotion programs, as well as quarantine, public health.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Hello. As Sanaa stated, the big change this year was co-locating health services, counseling and psychological services, and health education in 72 Pine Street. So we're trying to develop greater collaboration and create a holistic model of care to be fully integrated into the RISD community. Health services, as some of you might know, we're really working to provide a lot of healthcare for your student at no cost. We cover basic healthcare, gynecologic care, LGBTQ specific healthcare, wellness, STI testing, and then we make medical referrals as needed. In addition, we've added some changes around the COVID pandemic. As everyone knows, we had the students quarantine when they first came to campus, which was challenging, but the students cooperated. Now going forward, we have surveillance testing, which is where we test approximately half of the community each week. The decision as to who to test has a lot to do with how often they're on campus and how many in-person classes they have. So we have high, medium, and low in terms of exposure, but we're really using this as our best defense against the spread of the virus. There's a testing dashboard so that any of you can go to it and just see how RISD is doing in terms of the number of tests we've done, how many positives we have, and just being able to monitor it for yourself. Also, we have testing updates, whether there's any changes to information from the CDC that we're integrating into our own policies and practices. And you can find all this information at covid.risd.edu. I went the wrong way. My millennial compatriots are laughing at me, I'm sure. Counseling and Psychological Services, or CAPS, is also located in the Pine Street suite. And we really want people to understand how physical health impacts your mental sense of well-being and vice versa. And so we really want people to look at their psychological health and how that impacts their ability to be makers at RISD and their enjoyment of life and being a student. At CAPS, we provide individual as well as group counseling. We have medication, crisis services, so that if you call the CAPS number, when it's after business hours, we do have trained clinicians that will answer the phone and respond. And then we also have community referrals for people that are looking for longer term therapy. And now I will hand it off to Elyana Kadish, our Health Education and Promotion Coordinator.
Thank you, Bob. Hi, good evening, everyone. As Bob and Sanaa said, my name is Elyana Kadish, and I am the Health Education and Promotion Coordinator here at RISD. I joined this summer, and I'm very happy to be with everyone tonight. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am working right today. You can see me here in the suite that Bob was just talking about in our Integrated Health and Wellness Center. I'm normally working from home, so my books that would normally line this bookcase are sitting in my office in my apartment, but I miss them and I'm excited to get some color up in here soon. So as Bob said, right, we're working together as an integrated department and unit to really holistically approach health and wellness, which is an interesting time to start a unique approach such as this when you're dealing with a global pandemic. And my role in this is to bridge between where the students are at in their own health and wellness journey and where our services can meet them, and how do we provide them with the education, the support, and also the agency and personal understanding to engage in health and wellness in ways that feel comfortable and individual to their needs and hopes and desires as they move through their time here at RISD. So some of the services that my office provides is there's 3 core areas. So we have the educational messaging on campus, and as you can imagine, this has mainly been COVID focused for the last few months as we've prepared campus and joined students on campus throughout the last few weeks around safety measures, around how to make sure that they are following the protocol and policies and also able to access all resources that they need, as well as attend classes and use their time in their studios. The second piece is the Health and Wellness Ambassador Program, which Sanaa mentioned, which is a new student leadership position on campus. I'm joined by 5 wonderful students spanning most of the undergraduate class years who are dedicated to being peer educators. And peer educators are folks who not only have an interest in health and wellness topics, so everything from physical to emotional, psychological well-being, but also more niche topics. I have one student who is very interested in nutrition and your gut health and the ways that your gut, like your second brain, interacts with the ways that we stay mentally and physically well, as well as doing broader projects. One that they're working on right now is called the Sunny Spots Map Project, which is a great combination of the educational piece as well as their background in art and design as makers here as RISD students, where they are designing a map of campus, locating and highlighting the sunniest spots where students can go and spend some time outside safely if they would like to sit socially distant or physically distant, as we've been talking about it in RISD terminology, from one another and enjoy sun throughout the fall while the weather's still good, and also in the winter when they just need to get outside and get some of that vitamin D. So our health ambassadors are a really great new program that will help connect students to one another and keep themselves well during this time. And finally, there is myself and my partners in the other departments at Student Affairs will be providing workshops, events, and activities that span health and wellness topics. That can look like everything from doing a cooking during COVID event, which happened during quarantine, which was about how to maximize our time and money in the grocery stores, knowing that those can be areas where we are around a lot of people, to bingo nights and trivia about health and wellness at large. So overall, these events, my events as well as the events in general, can be found at evolved.risd.edu, and I'm happy to speak to more events that are upcoming. Just tonight, there are 5 events happening while we're here together, all across different topics, and those are all found on involved.risd.edu through partnerships under the Center for Student Engagement.
Thank you, Elyana and Bob, for really sharing a good overview of what health and wellness does, and for keeping our students safe and mentally healthy and full of vitamin D. We will now start our Q&A section of this session. I know that we've asked you to send in some questions ahead of time. So we have a list of questions. Thank you so much for sharing them in advance, and we will answer those as well. You can still put in your questions, as my colleague Mariam had chatted in the chat earlier on. Just type them in the question and answer section, and I will read them out loud, and Bob and Elyana will answer them. So with no further ado, I will start the questions. Thank you, Victoria Macready. You have the first question. I was so grateful to RISD for providing a safe environment, but what are some of the ways students can meet one another in this COVID environment? I have to say that's a question that came often in this, in the questions we received before, the worry about isolation for students.
Absolutely. And that, like Sanaa said, that is a question that is on all of our minds. We're all living in different levels of isolation and limited social contact in comparison to our realities before COVID. And yes, it is one of the concerns, right, that we are taking these measures to keep everyone safe, and that does impact the ways that they can engage with one another. So the things that you can find on campus and that your students can find on campus is not only Zoom, so virtual events that are happening synchronous, so at the same time, where they would join on and do a bingo night or a trivia or watch a movie with other residents in their hall, which is a great way for them to get connected to community. But there are also tents around campus. We have closed off a part of Benefit Street. The city allowed RISD to close off a part of Benefit Street for some classes to occur outside, social distantly, as well as for students to sit in those tents around campus and do work on their projects. I was walking through the first year area by the Met, the dining hall, and saw some students drawing distantly in one of those tents. And so this is a great way for students to try to engage with one another, is to really utilize the events that are occurring on campus. And while, yes, it would be great to do bingo in person, we can do bingo online, and we can do some of those events over Zoom. And when they're looking to get outside, there are available spaces for them to go and meet their peers, both that they might be in studios and classes with, as well as peers from other classes and areas on campus.
Thank you, Elyana. And one question that kind of fits in as well in terms of isolation, as students are often without roommates. What can we do to make sure that people are checking on them, that the student has arrived in his or her dorm?
Absolutely. So yes, as Sanaa said, most of our students are living in singles this year, so they do not have traditional roommates, but they do have traditional RAs. So they still have RAs in their floors and in their buildings, and those folks are checking in on them and doing their rounds as they would normally, and students are encouraged to contact their RAs either over email or simply by walking down the hall, knocking on the door or leaving a message. And so while that increases a student's ability to engage with their RAs, when they would like to take the action, their RAs are also checking in on them, right? So as I said, they're not only hosting events for their floors and community spaces for their residents, but they're also doing their rounds as they normally would to make sure that students are safe and taken care of. In the event that a student might be out late at night, right? We always encourage that students think about who their support systems are and who are their people that they feel comfortable sending a message to, right? One of the parts of moving away to college is that we have to figure out how to re-navigate our day-to-day, right? We're not coming home to family or to friends or wherever our home lives normally were, and we have to navigate and add new folks into our lives to be that. So if you're concerned or your student is concerned about being in a studio and walking home at night, thinking about a plan, you know, who is their person? Is it a sibling, a cousin, a friend that they can text and let them know when they should be home and that they're going to text them when they get back to their dorm? That also doesn't mean that they wouldn't see their RA in that moment, but thinking about other systems so that everyone can feel more comfortable navigating campus as they get more used to Providence, if they're new to the area or if they're living off campus for the first time.
Thank you, Elyana. So that goes also in maybe with another question we received ahead of time that said, well, there are many resources available to help students who may be struggling with stress or anxiety. How can we be sure those who are reluctant to ask for help get the support they're needing? So you talked about the RA, but what are other ways the students, can be checked on?
Absolutely. So that's one of those big pieces, right? Is that we all need help at moments, and sometimes we just are not really interested in asking for the help we need. And that's a really normal response, especially for students who are living through a new environment. If they're a returning RISD student or not, this is a new dynamic of college. And especially for our newer students, our transfer students, our first-year students, finding who you feel comfortable with, especially in a COVID context, can be harder and can take longer. So the piece that I would encourage and that I speak to my students about, right, is identifying where resources exist already if you're not ready to talk to a person, right? So like thinking about what might be available on the Health and Wellness RISD website, what might be available on the COVID RISD website if your questions are about COVID, looking at what the counseling service hours are, all of those sort of things, all that sort of information is available, and setting yourself up to have a little bit more information, right? That doesn't feel like you have to call someone on the phone or ask them all 500 questions, right? All the things rolling around in your brain, but that you prepare yourself with some answers ahead of time that hopefully make you feel more confident to engage with those folks. And that's the piece about college, is at the end of the day, we are there to provide those services. And this is where you as parents and family are really helpful partners, is to encourage them that that's what we're here for, right? We want to talk to them. We want to hear from them. And that's why I get paid, right? If students didn't want to interact with me, I wouldn't have a job. And so it's really helpful to have you all encourage them to just reach out, shoot an email, ask an RA, find that one person that they feel comfortable asking that one question, and really getting them used to engaging slowly so that hopefully they will move forward. And we're there to help them, and it's not a burden or a problem for them to ask us many questions, and that's what we want to hear from them. So that would be really helpful for you as our partners to just remind them that we love to hear from them, and that's why we're here.
Thank you, Elyana. And now we have a question from Anthony Tamburello. Dr. Samuels mentioned that basic health services are offered for free for RISD students. Does it matter if they have parent health insurance, i.e. not the RISD offered health insurance?
No, that doesn't matter. We want every student to have insurance in case we have to refer them outside of health services into the community or for some specialized tests. And that's where the insurance would kick in. But in terms of the basic services that we provide on campus, every student is covered.
Thank you, Bob. And now a question that has been on everyone's mind, COVID cases. Any cases of COVID on campus? This is, I should say, it's a question from many people, but Norma Sarkisian has typed it in the Q&A. So I will give her credit for it.
Yes, we have had a couple of positive cases. We've had approximately 6, 5 students and 1 employee. Some of these we identified during our baseline testing, which is how we refer to the testing that students went through when they first came to campus. And we've had a couple since the beginning of the semester. So in terms of how we are doing compared to other schools, we're doing great. The students are wearing the masks, they are paying attention to the social distancing guidelines, and they're working really hard to keep our campus open and to keep students here and to keep learning. And their investment is so great that they are supporting and checking each other. And so we're doing great at this point. And I'm very pleased that the plans that we put together really gave guidance to the students, and then really the students' willingness to work with us and work with each other to keep our campus safe has just been phenomenal.
Thank you, Bob. What about testing and contact tracing?
We have a number of people who've been trained for doing to do contact tracing. And for people who aren't familiar, when you have a positive individual who tests positive for COVID, then people that they've come into close contact with need to be sort of communicated with, and then they go into quarantine. So a person who's positive goes into isolation. And we support them, but they're in a separate, a separate housing situation. And then the students that are considered close contacts, they quarantine where they're living now. And we've been able to de-densify the campus and provide singles for all of the students, and really limit even their bathroom structures. We've really tried to de-densify as much as possible. There was another question that I'm forgetting right now.
Contact tracing?
Yeah, that was the contact tracing where we communicate. What was before the contact? I'm sorry.
Just a process for testing for COVID.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We do surveillance testing. And so we have a tent set up outside. Right now it's in front of Thompson House. It's going to be moved to in front of the museum. And so we're testing about 50% of the campus each week. And then if anyone has symptoms that might or might not be COVID related, they go to inside Thompson House. We've set that up specifically as a respiratory clinic so that, students that have like a hurt ankle go to Pine Street, but people who are coughing and might have COVID, we send them to the respiratory clinic at Thompson House so that we're not mixing sort of healthy with students that might test positive.
Sounds good. And now in terms of planning for the future, this parent says, I would be interested to hear if RISD has plans to increase COVID testing when numbers start to rise within the community. Would numbers increasing on Brown's campus be a cause for alarm for the RISD campus?
Well, we have a number of people at RISD that are watching a lot of variables. So the numbers at Brown could have an impact on RISD, the numbers in Providence, the numbers in Rhode Island. And so we're really taking it all into account as we make decisions in terms of the amount of testing we do, or whether, we're considering going to remote. It's never just one variable. We're looking at the combination to make the best decision possible.
Thank you, Bob. What about if a student thinks that his roommate is sick or having a hard time dealing with the situation? What can that student do?
Well, those are two slightly different questions. If he feels they're sick, really encouraging the student to call health services and we have nurse practitioners that will respond to the student and do an assessment over the phone. You know, the first part of that assessment is to figure out what's going on. And then the second part is to direct the student either to the Pine Street clinic or Thompson House Clinic. And so that's if they're physically not feeling well. If it feels like it's more dealing with the stress and anxiety and of being at school or concerns about COVID, then the communication would be with the counseling center. And there, the roommate can talk with one of the counselors and get some ideas about how to approach their friend. But eventually the goal would be to have their friend call and, the roommate call and just say, this is what's going on. And the CAPS people are really, they're experienced clinicians. They've worked on college campus for many years, and they can really be sympathetic, supportive, and help the students through difficult times.
Thank you, Bob. But what about dental support, dental services? If a student has a toothache?
Dental services would need to be handled by a community provider, and we can get some referrals from health services, but we don't have any dental services on campus.
Thank you, Bob. A question from Jessica states, will the counseling be virtual now? Can parents reach out to counselors as well?
Parents can talk with counselors. Well, let me step back. All of the counseling sessions will be virtual, remote, either video is preferred, but occasionally we're working with students on the telephone for various reasons. But if a parent calls, they can talk with a clinician to get some ideas about how to approach their student, or if they have some concerns about their student, they can share that with the counselor. All the counseling sessions are confidential, so a counselor would not be able to talk to the parent about a student, their student, if they're being seen there, unless the student gave permission. But we really work with supporting the parents, but our main focus is working with the students. So we can talk to you about some of the developmental challenges or some of the things that students are typically dealing with, but we wouldn't be able to say specifically, to provide specific information about your student unless working with you was part of the goal of the treatment at that point.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, Christine asks, any plans to add any days off, mental health days, to replace some of the vacation days they will miss with spring break being canceled and shortened Thanksgiving break?
I have not heard any discussions about adding days off in that way. I think a lot of the shortening is just really trying to, contain the semester, and but I have not heard any plans like that. Elyana, you're going to add to that?
No, I just realized I was muted. Just Zoom technicalities.
Well, we can also look into it and see if anything has been thought out. But most likely, since you haven't heard about it, it is not the case.
No.
A question from Tammy Sherman. Can you review the options students have for getting care? Is there a phone number to call to discuss their issue to determine if they should be seen in person? Is the health center doing virtual appointments. So you've answered the virtual appointment.
Yeah, the health services is doing a hybrid model. So they're doing some virtual appointments, but they're also doing some in-person appointments, both at Pine Street as well as Thompson House when they're evaluating students for COVID. That's in person, and so we're doing both for health services, but the CAPS is virtual, and the health promotion is we're doing mostly virtual programming at this point.
In addition to general care, similar to what Bob was speaking about with one of the previous questions, health services does have a list of recommended referrals for specialists. So that would not include dentistry, simply because dentists don't need a referral from a primary care doctor, but they do have some that they can help a student determine who might be the best option for them, location, distance, earliest point available for dentistry. But in general, if a student needs a referral for a specialist appointment with a specialist physician, they can work with health services to get that information and to get the referral from health services as their primary care.
Thank you, Elyana. A question from Monk Topping. I may be misinformed, but isn't the new Unified Health Center located at some distance physically from campus? Is this a concern for you?
Oh, I'm not muted. The new location is more of a distance from campus than the old health center was, and it's a little bit of a concern. But what we're able to provide there is such an improvement that that was a trade-off that we're willing to make at this point. We can see more students easily. We can de-densify, and so their contact in the space is safer. We're able to have the Pine Street and the Thompson House, those two different locations, but still see a fair number of students. And so it's a little bit further, but we're really hoping that the services that we can provide will make it worth the walk.
And when Bob says it's a little bit further, it's not right on campus, but it's also not very far away. I've been on campus all day walking back and forth, and it takes me 5 or 6 minutes to cross over the river and be right near the museum and be on campus. Obviously, going up those hills takes a few more minutes, so depending on where they're going on campus, they should budget a little bit more time, but it's a very nice walk, lots of restaurants and community small businesses around, so there's also not much of a concern that they're walking in areas where there aren't other people for safety and lights and kind of eyes on the streets from a community development perspective. So there's lots of community spaces and areas. We're also close to the park that is right across the river, and they can walk up and down with the river where they do water fire. So it's a nice location, but yes, it is a few minutes away from main campus.
But there are a few sunny spots on the way too.
Yes, there are good spots to stop in at.
And some grass as well, right? You can find a sunny spot, wet grass to sit on.
Absolutely.
So there are a couple of questions about the flu shot. Does RISD offer the flu shot on campus, and is it free?
Yes, RISD does offer the flu shot on campus, and it is free. I was at the flu clinic today handing out with my health ambassadors. We were handing out bags to students with some small self-care items in them as they left the flu clinic. So there are flu shots available. We've held 2 full flu clinics already, and there will be a 3rd one happening probably towards the end of the month or early next month with spots, and that is completely free of charge, as well as there are local CVS, Walgreens, as well as primary care. But for our students, CVS and Walgreens, if they would like to get one sooner, that they can go to using the RISD health insurance, it would be free as well there.
Thank you. Next question from Paul Demarinis. If students are quarantined, how do they pursue their studies in the studio-based classes?
It's definitely more challenging. All of the faculty members are aware of the goals in terms of keeping the community safe. And so they know that if a student is quarantined, that they will make adjustments and work with the student in terms of keeping them active and not losing ground as much as possible. And so they will make adjustments with the schedule of assignments or the types of assignments in order to facilitate the students completing the work as needed.
Thank you, Bob. So let me look for another question. I have a parent who wrote, as a transfer student in a single apartment in the Edge and being in classes with upperclassmen students who are already a tight-knit group and haven't been open to including her, my daughter is feeling very lonely and unconnected. She is an extreme extrovert and isolation is wearing her. I'm encouraging her to find a club and to continue to try to make connections, which she is doing. Is RISD Life going to do something by offering any dorm building specific activities? Is there a way for the RAs and for the TAs from the summer transfer session to reach out to transfer students specifically? I believe you somewhat answered that already, Elyana, but we do have a number of questions coming out about access to other, students, friends, social network.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to reiterate. First, I would like to commend your daughter for continuing to try to engage. It is hard transferring to a new school, being a new student, and trying to find those connections is very difficult. And also, as someone who is very much an extrovert, I sympathize and empathize with the quarantine weighing on our mental health and well-being and not having those times to engage and recharge through the energy of other people. So, like Sanaa said, and I said earlier, there are events happening that are dorm and hall specific, including the Edge, where their resident advisors, as well as their heirs, will be providing residents specific for their hall. So what they can do is they can go right onto Involved and look up events for their hall by typing in the Edge into the search bar, and they'll see the upcoming events that are happening for them specifically. And that can be for any hall. I know that there's an activity happening in a couple of days, one tonight in one movie hall. One hall is doing a movie night tonight. In a couple of days, there's a kind of a more doodle event where students are drawing similar designs and sharing what they're doing together. And so there are ways for them to connect with one another in those spaces. And additionally, their RAs are there for them, just like we are there for the students at large. Their RAs care about them and chose to become resident advisors to support students. So, I would encourage your daughter and your students at large to reach out to their RA and let them know what they're interested in, right? Our clubs on campus, we have a wide variety of clubs to find out if they're running the semester and to get involved with those different activities. And they're doing a mix of in-person, online, or on Zoom, synchronous and asynchronous events, all following the different guidelines that both the state and RISD have put in place to make sure that all programming happens in a safe way. And those are using those outdoor spaces on campus as well as different Zoom links and platforms. So it's a little bit of an uphill battle, as making friends is, no matter what, as you transition to a new community. And this is an added obstacle in that battle, but it's about persistence and hopefully finding that one connection that builds from there, and just knowing that we're all kind of struggling with this together. And the more that we continue to reach out, hopefully students will respond. So encouraging them to just keep at it and being excited to have the interactions that they do get, and looking for opportunities to build more.
Thank you, Elyana. I did want to ask a question that came up about Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving break. The parent asked, will there be Thanksgiving break? And how is travel or the break? organized? I know we have recommended to limit travel.
Yes, I do believe everyone should have received a letter sent out today by the Associate Vice President in Student Affairs, Barbara LaMonaco. It really gives details about Thanksgiving. The short version is we are really discouraging travel because if students come back, they would have to quarantine for 14 days, if they leave the state. And that is pretty much means that they will be finishing their semester virtually, just in terms of the number of days that are left after the Thanksgiving break. And so we shorten the break and are also discouraging travel. And Student Affairs is in the process of really trying to create supports and programming and getting the dining facilities and really trying to attend to students a little bit differently. If we're asking them to stay, we want to still have a positive experience, but we're really discouraging travel over the Thanksgiving break.
Thank you, Bob. And I forgot that I wanted to mention earlier when Elyana, you were talking about all the activities that are being organized. I know that it has been on everyone's mind as we're coming closer to November, the topic of elections. And RISD is doing quite a lot to engage students as well in activities around voting. So this is something else to get a pulse on how students are doing at a time that is very emotional for many. I don't know if you have anything to add about that, Elyana or Bob?
Yeah, absolutely. So like Sanaa said, yes, we are doing a lot around the elections for both the presidential and the vice presidential debate, for example. They held watch parties through the Center for Student Involvement where students could come onto the same Zoom and watch the debate together so that they could engage in conversation with one another and also share space if they would rather watch that with folks than watch it alone. So that's one way that we've been engaging students, as well as talking to them about voter registration and voter deadlines. All of this information is provided in a nonpartisan manner and is to simply provide students with the information and the answers to the questions that they may have if they're doing ballots as absentee, voting in person, or voting by mail in or outside the state of Rhode Island. In addition to that, there is a committee that has been formed to do programming and efforts and education as we lead up to and after the election to support students in their needs, as well as changes that could occur in policy and regulations depending on the outcome of the election. So all of that is happening currently in terms of voting and getting students prepared to engage in their civic process if they choose to do so, as well as during the election and post the election, encouraging students to ask us their questions and to make sure that they're up to date on any changes that may occur.
Thank you, Elyana. Okay, so I think we're going to have a live answer for one of the next questions. Let me know if you're able to see the question. My colleague, I think, is posting it. And I will read it out loud, I think. It is from Maha Topic, again. Are students permitted to have even one student in their dorm room, or must they always remain alone?
So, oh, go ahead, Bob.
Go for it.
So just in the last couple of days, the Residence Life team updated the guest policy due to the ways that, and because of how dedicated and compliant our students have been and how seriously they have taken the safety of themselves and others, that students are now permitted, if they are living in an on-campus residence hall, to have one guest at a time into their residence hall who is also an on-campus resident student. So that does allow them to have a friend come over and spend time in the residence halls with them under certain guidelines, which includes wearing a mask at all times while inside the residence halls as well as outside. if you're going to be spending time with one another. So they are now allowed to have one guest at a time, and they can find that information both on the Residence Life Instagram, has all the slides and information about the rules and regulations and the change in policy. And they can also reach out to the Residence Life staff or their RA if they have any questions about the updated guest policy.
Prior to this, students were able to have guests within their same residence hall. That was the case since they got out of quarantine. But this update was just because it just made sense in terms of ways that the students can manage, being socially distant and get some support in that, but still being physically distant but socially connected.
Thank you. And you will see that another question from Christine has been posted in the chat. Does it seem likely that students will continue to have single rooms, only no roommates in the dorms for spring semester?
Yes, that's the current plan. Just to really an abundance of caution, and so that it decreases the spread, and we feel this is the safest way to proceed going forward.
Thank you, Bob. The next question or comment from Victoria McCready is, this is definitely not a complaint, but my son's RA is very standoffish. I honestly think he's really afraid of getting COVID. He doesn't check in on the resident students and is uncomfortable socially when approached. I think my son is just coping and not worrying so much about it. With this, who is a secondary go-to person for him?
Absolutely, and that's a difficult situation, and I appreciate that the empathy that you're showing both towards your son and the RA who might be struggling with figuring out how to complete his or their responsibilities while also keeping themselves safe. In that case, if your son is living or your child is living in a residence hall, there are other RAs in that building. They could always go and speak to an RA on a different floor if they have questions. And if it does become a concern, right, they can raise that concern to another RA in the building. The other person that they can speak to is their community coordinator. So each kind of area of residence halls on our campus has a community coordinator who is a full-time professional staff member. If their child is having issues or scheduling conflicts and getting a hold of their RAs, as they are all very busy, I have come to learn at RISD, very busy schedules, that they can always reach out to their community coordinator to get any questions answered. And that information is on the Residence Life website, so they can look at what their hall is or what house they might be living in, and that will tell them who their community coordinator is, and they'll be able to answer their questions as well.
Elyana's answer was perfect, except they're actually referred to as area coordinators. So if that's what you're looking up, that would be the title that you would be looking for.
Thank you. Another question has been posted in the chat, and this refers to the very well-known artist ball. Will there be a socially distanced artist ball this year, or is it canceled due to health concerns?
We've started having some very serious conversations about the artist ball and variations that we might be recommending. It won't be the same as it has been in the past. But we're really trying to think about, is there a way that we can do it safely? If we can't figure that out, then we will postpone it to another year. But right now that hasn't been decided, and there are a lot of people much smarter than me trying to figure this out. We know how much of a part of the community the artist ball is, and so I feel that there will be something done, but I don't have a clear sense of what that will look like.
And for parents who are joining us who are new to RISD, the Artist Ball is a tradition at RISD. It's an event that happens, from what I understand, because I haven't lived through it yet, Halloween. And I have heard quite a bit that students make their own costumes. So it is quite a fabulous ordeal with very creative and interesting outfits. So we hope we can make it happen safely at some point. We have about 7 minutes before the end of the session. I see a couple more questions, but also if anyone else has a question they really want to have answered, please do type it in the Q&A. So Billy Lara said, I wanted to be clear on what I heard, and that's regarding elections. Can you help out-of-state students obtain absentee ballots, and where could they go for help?
So I can answer the second part of your question. The first part of the question, I don't have a concrete answer on. I know that we are working to help students understand the process as well as what they might need to do. And that is all happening through the Center for Student Involvement, so CSI. We have a couple of acronyms. I'm still getting used to what each one stands for. So they can reach out to the CSI staff, or they can go on to Involved and look at when one of the voting or registration events is happening, and they can get connected and get help through the CSI staff. That would be the best way, and they'll hopefully have the better answer for the first part of that question.
Thank you, Elyana. And I have to say, since Billy, you typed the question, I do need to put a plug in for the Ambassador Program, which is a program that brings together parents who are upperclassmen with first-year parents. So if some of you in the session are first-year parents and feel like you have a lot of questions, please check out the family's website. And you can click on seeking ambassador support, and then we could link you with a family such as Billy, who could help answer questions for you and navigate RISD. I see one new question. I came late, apologies. We will be more transparent to the new students by letting them know it's tough for many to make friends, especially in this environment, and give them some tips other than joining a club or asking RAs or whatever. Sorry, it got moved in. Asking RAs or whatever is in the queue for them. Addressing all new students, I feel, can be more effective. You mentioned being persistent. Comment like that. So I feel like Elyana and Bob, you have discussed a lot of opportunities students have had, but we can always try to do more, right? In terms of being able to provide students with mental health support, etc. And we are telling them how it is a difficult and a challenging year this year.
And when we're also balancing it, that it's also a very exciting time too, and a time to explore and take small risks. That's part of why they're in college. They're really stretching themselves, and you do a little bit at a time, and you keep doing it because everyone is sort of exploring this time in their lives, and more people want to be friends with you, with your student, than not. And you really have to trust that process too.
In addition to everything that Bob was just saying, part of what I'm working on right now with the public health programming team is working with students to try to get some feedback on what they're looking for from our engagement with them, both in terms of health-related events and non-health-related events. So this is information, if this is something that you're hearing from your students, that they would like some direct communication, I'm happy to bring that back to our group meeting tomorrow and talk about some different ways that we can get some of those messages out, that they're not alone in increasing the messages that we've already been providing, that they're not alone and that this is a struggle for everyone, and make sure that they know that we encourage them to be persistent and to try new tactics and engage with what's available to them.
Thank you. I wanted to end on the following question. How can we parents help our students' well-being from a distance?
I'll let you answer first, Elyana, and then I'll add at them.
Sure, absolutely. One of the biggest pieces for me that I really love when a student is talking about the ways that their parents are involved, or their family members, or whoever they're closest to, in just providing them the space to be a little bit of a sounding board, right? Have the student give you the questions that they're on their mind, let them come to you for what they're struggling with, and then provide the advice, right? Instead of the kind of checking in or over analyzing maybe the comments, right? And giving them the agency to provide you and say, hey, I'm doing really well in X, Y, or Z, or I really love the food, and our quarantine meals were amazing, which was really wonderful to hear from students. They were sending dining all sorts of fun graphics and thank you notes. But I'm having a challenge with my time management, right? And just helping them understand that these are challenges that are part of the college experience, right? No one walks into college and knows exactly how to manage their schedule. So the best way is to continue to be partners for them and encourage them to build on what they may already be thinking, and then provide notes and support and suggestions. For example, for me, when I was in undergrad, I was taking all these different courses. I went to a liberal arts college. I had no idea what I wanted to study. And I was talking about a class, and my mom said to me, well, isn't that this major? And I went, I think it might be. It might be that major. And then that became one of my dual majors, right? So she waited for me to bring up my interest, and then provided me with some concrete advice that I probably would have taken a few more weeks to get to find out that there was a whole field of study in what I was interested in doing.
I agree with everything that Elyana said. The only few things I would add is that this is a change for them, but it's also a change for you. And part of the process is learning how to be parents to emerging adults. You don't know where they are, you don't know what time they're going to bed. And so there's a lot of things that as parents, we have to learn how to say, okay, it's time for me to let go a little bit. You still want to be involved, you want to be curious, but these are decisions that they're going to have to start making on their own. And so you trusting that they can do that shows your confidence in their ability, which is a reflection of how you've been as a parent. And so you have to trust in the job that you've done up to this point, and that what they're capable of. And that goes a long way for you saying, hey, I have confidence that you can figure this out. Talk to people, talk to faculty members, talk to advisors, reach out, but also really let them know that you have confidence in their abilities to navigate this time of their lives.
Thank you, Bob and Elyana, for answering all the questions from parents during this session and providing this overview of health and wellness. Thank you, parents, for joining us and for asking your questions. If you have more questions that we were not able to answer, as you can see in the chat, we provided an email, rsvp@risd.edu. Please do feel free to send your questions to that email, and we will make sure to get back to you. Also, if you want to review some of those answers that were asked, we will be posting this recorded session on the family's website under the RISD weekend event starting Tuesday, October 13th. Thank you very much, and have a great evening, and enjoy the rest of RISD weekend. It's still going on tomorrow. Bye.